Welcome to Unit 1A. In this video, we're going to talk just briefly about order of operations, exponents, absolute values, as well as naming real numbers. So first off, we want to think about our order of operations. Again, this should be a review from previous years. You're going to perform orders of operation with parentheses first, or grouping symbols, and then you're going to simplify your powers. You're going to multiply and divide from left to right, and again, multiplication and division happen left to right simultaneously, so you don't just go through and do all multiplication and then all division. You do left to right multiplication or division, whichever comes first. And then the same with addition and subtraction. You might remember PEMDAS or Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally as some mnemonics to remind you about those orders of operation. When you're asked to simplify, for whatever reason, the word simplify confuses students. Are you solving something? Not really. You haven't solved anything because you don't have an equation. To simplify, do what instincts tell you to do. You're going to combine like terms. You're going to add numbers that can be added or multiply or compute. So simplifying for a lot of you, yes, it means it's the same as solving, but mathematically speaking, you haven't solved anything. So be aware of that. Every year I get those questions. What does it mean to simplify? What are you looking for? Just do what natural instincts tell you to do there, okay? Evaluate or evaluation simply means you're going to do as much as you can. Oftentimes you're going to be given a value to plug in for a variable and then go from there. So evaluate is kind of like the same thing as simplify. Again, you're not solving anything, you're just computing until you can do no more. And then absolute value. Absolute value are those bars that you may see. It looks something like this. And it is just referring to the distance from 0. So again, absolute value is just the distance from 0. It's always a positive number. So if I ask you the absolute value of -5, you're going to tell me it's 5. And if I ask you the absolute value of 5, it is also 5 as well. So our real number system. So in Algebra 1, we're only going to deal with real numbers, not imaginary numbers. So these are numbers that you could touch. You could go to the lumber store and say, give me this number or that number. These are numbers that do exist, you can measure out. Now we've got real numbers, and we've got two types of real numbers. We've got rational numbers, and we've got irrational numbers. And I like to think of rational numbers as those numbers that someone could give you exactly. Go to the lumber yard and say, I need 5.2 feet of a board, a length of a board. Whereas an irrational number is a number that can't be written as a fraction or a ratio. It's also a number that goes on forever, and it doesn't end and it doesn't repeat. So while we could round an irrational number to get an estimate, it is just that, always an estimate. So if I'm going to Lowe's or Home Depot and I say I need pi feet of board, they're not going to be able to give me exactly pi length feet of board. They might give me 3.14 feet. They might give me 3.1. They might just say, here's 3. So again, irrational numbers are those numbers that never end, they never repeat. Whereas rational numbers are those numbers that will repeat or they will end. They can be written as a decimal or a fraction. And if you think about it, any repeating decimal can be turned into a fraction. You might remember that from one of your units last year. So those are rational numbers. So under rational numbers, we have special names. So rational numbers are, again, those numbers that either will repeat or end, or they can be written as fractions or decimals. Some special numbers, rational numbers, are integers. So those are going to be basically positive and negative numbers. So -7 is an integer, as well as 7 is an integer. Then we have some extra special integers. Those are going to be our whole numbers. Those are only those positive and zero numbers. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Those are going to be your whole numbers. And then we have another even more specific, which is called our natural numbers. And those are what we naturally count with. So when you were a small child and you started to count your Cheerios in the morning, you would count 1, 2, 3, 4. You didn't start with 0. That's not natural. Okay? So that's our real number system. And just some special names, vocabulary. Try to remember those terms. You will see them throughout the year and use them. Here's a visual for you where we have our irrational numbers. So if you think about it, you've got like the square root of 7 is irrational. Pi is irrational, okay? And then we have our rational numbers. So that could be something like a fraction, 1/3. And then an integer could be something like -3. And a whole number could be 0. And then a natural number could be 1. Those are just some examples. And again, there are infinitely many possibilities for these numbers. But we've got two types, again, rational and irrational. And the most famous irrational number is pi. And we've got square roots, things that never end. Irrational, but well-rounded, I like to say, because you can go and find a board that's about that, or you could go to the store and get an estimate of their value. And finally, with this, I want you to think about your order of operations. In your post-video check, you'll be doing a couple quick examples. And again, as always, if you've got any questions, please ask in those post-video checks. Ask me in class. I look forward to having a more in-depth conversation about order of operations, evaluating, and your real numbers.